Hello everybody, my name is Devlog. I need to learn how to pronounce my name apparently. And this is another devlog video. Now, this is a devlog video because I've reached the next milestone. The next milestone being we are now in version 1.1. You know what? This is very noisy. I'm going to quickly tab out and turn this down because the only way I can currently do it is within the console. 0.7. Let's do that. Hopefully that isn't too loud. It doesn't sound too loud or whatever, but a few things have changed since the last version. Not much since the last devlog, because the devlog I made because I wanted to get a devlog out, and I wanted actually to show people who were interested that there is a game and it is being made, because I had streamed this and I had got a little bit dark in that area where I had started streaming it. I had streamed a ton of development and then just nothing, I just stopped. So I'm going to give you a walkthrough of version 1.1. otherwise known as Set the Game and Listen, and I'm going to describe and explain the features. Now, Set the Game and Listen, let's move the mouse out of the way. Set the Game and Listen was an update with the idea and intention to implement an audio system and basically implement a few settings. So you can I can issue commands currently within the console, but eventually there'll be buttons and menus to do it all from, but there are a few commands which you can do now within the game, or within the console of the game, and they just do a variety I don't really know how to explain it without showing you. So first of all, one thing which I had requested, not by many people, I think by one person, was the ability to rebind keyboard, which is a bit odd. So now there is a keyboard profile which you can delete, and you can assign your own keys or whatever. If it's not set up by default, if a profile doesn't exist, then one will be set up by default. There's no issue with that. I think in the final version of the game I'm going to have a launcher before this actual game is launched, so a sub launcher, and then you can set up basically a bunch of launch settings, so you can choose which controller is player 1 when you initially go onto it, and I don't know, do a variety of things within that. It's not going to be anything fancy, it's just going to be a little launcher. So you can set that now. Nothing much has changed in that area. The one thing I should actually I don't really need to point it out, but I'm going to anyway. There's a bug currently where if you try to delete the profile, because you have to delete the profile in order to recreate it, so if you delete the profile and you are the player in control, otherwise known as player 0, which you can see it there, you see if you look at all the devices it says unassigned, and then the one at the top says number, so that number represents the player and player 0 is the player in control. If you delete the profile, then nobody has control and you can't do anything. So please don't do that. So at the moment, I'm just going to assign it to player 1, the keyboard to player 1, and the controller, which I generally use, to player 0. Now, in the settings, the only thing nothing has changed since the last nothing has changed since the last update, as far as I'm aware. We now have low settings, so the ability to put down frame rate, linear interpolation, you can toggle that on or off, no clip, which just lets you clip around, although you can't travel outside the boundary. I've had no reason to at the moment, but I'll probably change that later. Wireframe, just display everything in wireframe, and hitboxes. These aren't going to be, or a lot of these aren't going to be accessible in the final version of the game. They're just here now because I need something to fill this menu. So, starting the game, the main thing which people may have noticed has changed is I rewrote the camera. This was actually rewritten on request. Somebody complained about how snappy the camera was, and I wasn't entirely happy with it. So at the moment the camera works with a difference based system, and it basically looks at where the current camera is looking and where it aims to look, and depending on that difference depends on how fast the camera moves. So if we're close together having a fight where we'll just be doing stuff like this, the camera won't move a great deal. It will still move, but it won't move an amazing deal. It does mean you can exit off the screen, and that. If you are further out, the camera will appear to be moving less, but let's see if I can demonstrate how snappy it is. So if I were to have the two players at opposite ends of the screen and I were to commit suicide, it would just zoom in like that, quite smooth, as opposed to before where it would just immediately click and that was a terrible click. Let me try that again. Immediately. Oh god, that was even worse. God damn it. Immediately click and attach them to attach to the player. So at the moment, it just sort of it actually moves now instead of just snapping to position, which you can demonstrate with this. So beforehand, you wouldn't really know what to do when everyone's dead, but now it actually just fades and it looks quite nice. Other than that, not much has changed in this aspect. We still have fighting the same. We have shields. I don't really know what else to mention in that area. There's actually one thing I do want to mention, which is completely unrelated, and it's been in the game since combat's been in the game, but I learnt a cool little thing that you can do, because I have explained beforehand, there is a sort of rocket jumping mechanic in this game. Not on purpose, but it kind of happened and developed that way. So you can jump regularly, you can get to this height, but if you jump, aim down and fire, you're ranged. There's a knockback, so you can launch yourself pretty high, but what you can also do is you can launch, then use the shield to bounce, and then you can launch again whilst you're in the air. You can get to some insane heights, because the bounce itself just launches you so far. So that was just interesting. So yeah, beyond that, there's not much more front-end wise. There is some settings. Let me just get a list up. Wait, nope, that's not what I want. Well, the main settings which we care about at the moment are the ability to reset stages, which means that I can just completely reset the stage, so if there's a terrible spawn, you can just reset the stage. This hopefully won't be an issue in the final version, because in the final version there'll be both pre-made and randomly generated maps, and I'll make sure with the randomly generated maps that there are checks that go along to them to make sure that nothing is dodgy. I have the ability to change the player count, which is what I'm going to do now. I'll set it to 8, because that's the maximum player count that I'm going to support for, or officially support for. So basically, the maximum player count I'm going to care for. It's a little bit inefficient now with these 8 players. I have ideas on how I can make it more efficient in the future, but you notice the frame rate's dropping. Hopefully, if everything goes to plan, this is going to be a 60 FPS 1080p video, and I'm hoping to make all the devlogs that. But this is what it looks like at the moment, and the frame rate drops. I have some, like I said, I have some ideas on how to make it more efficient, but yeah, I wouldn't expect 8 players to be playing on this, really. I'd say the max player, not the max, but what I'd be expecting is for there to be maybe 4 players. And with 4 players, we got it fine. Where's player? There's player 2. So yeah, 4 players, we just displayed around the edge there. But going back to what I did say, I will be officially supported for 8 players. I will leave the ability in the console, I guess. Well, it depends how things go. I may leave the ability to have multiple players, or to go over the 8-player cap. But there probably won't be any HUD support for that, and it'll be a little bit messy and a little bit inefficient with all the players. One thing I should note as well, I've changed how polling information works, and I have an idea on how to change it even further. So at the moment, whenever a player wants to move, or the old system, whenever I wanted to detect whether a button had been pressed, I would poll the device which the player is attached to. So if player 1 is controlled by this gamepad, I would poll this device, and then I would check the input. Now the system's changed, so instead of polling the device upon request, so each time I want to check whether a button has been pressed, it's polled every update. So every sort of physics update in the game, the controller is polled, and then I use that result to determine what's going on. This is ever so slightly more efficient than constantly polling over and over and over again. And if you had players constantly jumping around sort of on top of their own heads, well, it's going to be infinitely more efficient. Let's just change the player count back to 2. Currently you can only do it whilst in this menu screen to prevent any sort of drawing errors. In the long run, not in the long run, in the short run or whatever. So what else is there to speak about? So the polling's changed. I shall quickly open up a list. I have a list of all of the stuff which has changed with this version, or improved or whatever. So first of all, the audio system's been implemented. There's a basic audio system. With the mouse. There's a basic audio system which you can use, and you can play sounds upon sort of anything. So I can fire something and play a sound, and I can play a sound when I'm hit. I also need some visual or some sound to display when a player has died, because that's something that's a little bit ambiguous at the moment. There's a player count, so the ability to change the players, although it's only by the console at the moment. Keyboard binding, shields were added, and this is since the last version, not since the last version you've seen. Wall bouncing, so the wall bouncing works along the lines of, the easiest way to see it, if I shoot this player up in the air, if you're stunned and you hit the wall or the floor with a high enough velocity, you will just bounce straight off of it. And this is what we, I think, because I have a local friend group, my computing class, who's helping me test this primarily at the moment. And I believe we've dubbed this the slam dunk. If you can get somebody in the air that's on a high sort of knockback and you hit down, they will bounce so high. It is ridiculous. There's also a mobility stun, although I believe the mobility stun does not, I don't know how good way to test this, I believe it does not affect the ability to do a ground pound. No, it doesn't. So ground pound is unaffected. Other than that, all movement is stunned, and that is basically this version 1.1. Now, I may as well go over and talk about the next couple versions of the game, or what's going to happen next. So, oh yes, I didn't mention, I don't believe I mentioned, I added a third track, which you're listening to right now. A third track or third song to the game, and of course this is only temporary music, but this is just all music which I just find, and I think it fits in well with the game. So I decided just to put it in there so I have something to listen to. This almost certainly won't be in the final version, because I need to have permission for the music in which I use, because I don't want to be releasing a game with sort of plagiarizing people's hard work. Anyone who's interested, this song is called Savant Melody Circus. I believe the album is Melody Circus. Savant, I don't actually know. Apologies if I got that the wrong way around. But that is this third track. In the final version, I think what I might do for music, just an idea off the top of my head now, like, well, I only had a couple minutes ago, I might just have it so I have one music folder, and people can put their own, at least the game with a few tracks to start with, but they can put their own music in that folder, and they will play in the background instead. So if people think, oh, you know what, I have my own, I don't know what you have, Screamo that I think would sound amazing to this game, and I don't think it would, but that's just me. I'm not a fan of Screamo music in the first place, but they could, and it would be rather simplistic and rather straightforward. So that's something I might do. Future updates, I'll talk about future updates now, and I'll talk about future plans and how I'm organising everything. I don't know whether I mentioned, but I've changed, or I've become more orderly in the updates. So I've actually planned out what the next couple updates are going to be. I've planned out the features, and just to give me some head in on what I need to do. So the next version 1.2, is quite blatant, well, quite simply and dully. I don't think dully is a word. It's just a bit dull is what I'm trying to express. It's just named UI overhaul, because that's all it is. And the description attached to this is a complete overhaul of the GUI, making it more modular and making it easier to use and navigate. So this is, as far as you're concerned as a player, the only changes are the menus are all going to change, and there are going to be things like text fields, sliders, drop-down menus, things like that. Things that would make it easier, or I'm trying to make a system that is easy to use with a controller. And for my sake, as the developer, it's going to be all modular, so I can basically, at the moment I have to hard code in almost everything to do with the menus. So that's basically every single part of the menu I have to sort of hard code in, and it gets a little bit tedious. So if I can make this, if I can do a complete overhaul and remake this system, then it will allow me to make menus and sub-menus just so much easier. It'll be ridiculously easy for me to do it, so that's why it's going to be very nice, or whatever. The update after that, version 1.3, is called UNI Customization. It's a bit crap of a name, but the idea of this is it's going to be two main features to this. I am making symbols with my hands, and I'm doing a lot of hand gestures, but nobody can see them, and that makes me sad. I may as well jump around a little bit, so we can see whether any bugs pop up as well. Be a little bit dull to just see the same screen over and over again. So UNI Customization, version 1.3, the two main features are number one, the ability to customize the player. It will most likely be very simple, and it will most likely be, at the moment, the ability to just change which colour you're using. But in the future, you'll be able to do things like potentially change shape or change slight model. I think the game I do want to orient around voxels, so I think I might just make a few little voxel-based models and give the player the opportunity to use those. I'm not entirely sure at the moment. I'm going to have to wait and see. So we're going to have to wait and see with that. And the second part is to do with the UNI, and I'm going to be developing a server, or some server architecture, which means that you don't have to play all on the same machine, that you should be able to play over LAN or WAN, so over the internet, or you can play locally. I'm not sure about how well it's going to perform over the internet. I know locally the servers I write are alright, but I'm not over the internet with things like games. I just need to learn where to optimize so the messages come through faster and whatever else. But yeah, at the moment I don't actually know how well this initial version is going to work over the internet. Hopefully it's going to work well enough to be able to play it, but it's more on just getting that whole multiplayer aspect of not having to play on the same machine up and running, so it's more focused on LAN than it is on the sort of online play. So that's what it is at the moment. There is going to be, or I think at the moment, there is going to be a private hosting tool, not a private, an external server hosting tool, all the plans are. So you'll be able to run a server in the background and connect to it, and there is going to be a embedded, I don't know, I'm going to call it embedded server hosting as well, so you'll be able to go in-game onto a sub-menu and then click a button and say launch a server or whatever. It'll give you the information you need about the server, or give you instructions or something like that. And then friends will be able to join to it, and it'll be all nice. And then the last update I have planned is called the Combat Voxel Revamp. And the Combat Voxel Revamp is the remake of the combat system. And I mentioned an idea I had about having sort of item control in the game, and that's what this system is going to include. This system is going to include item control. It's also going to change the way maps work. So there's going to be new systems where items will be dropped into maps. There's going to be dynamic elements of maps as well, so pieces of maps will break apart and they will fall over and it'll go a little bit mad and insane. So that's interesting, at least in my opinion. I don't know really what else to speak about. That is basically the plan for the moment. I have ideas for other updates that I'm going to include, although I don't have any specific thought out details. Now I believe I have to get this into at least a pretty much almost done state by, I want to say May? Probably a little bit sooner. Maybe May. I'm going to go with May. So hopefully by May we should have a playable game, a completely playable game. Other than that, I don't think there's much more to speak about, so thank you for listening, thank you for watching. Any feedback you could give would be much appreciated. Any suggestions for what you want in the game, any suggestions that you want to see on YouTube, whatever else. But yeah, that'll be it. So, goodbye.